Welcome back to Unfiltered, Unspoken podcast, where I told you we're going to continue to share life experiences. We want to welcome Daniel Adams to Unfiltered, Unspoken podcast, and he has a testimony to share. Daniel, can you come up and tell us a little bit about yourself? And then, as y'all know, City Sid is going to kick off that first question.
Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel Adams. I am a certified peer recovery specialist in the state of Virginia, certified by the Virginia Certification Board. I am a person with not only a lived experience and living and experience, but also, too, I was incarcerated in the state of Virginia for 30 years. And the thing about it was I had to find myself best while I was incarcerated. And most important is I had a lot of great brothers around me to pull a piece of me or to add on to me to help me find myself best. And since I have been out, I have hit the ground running. I'm presently applied to go into Arlington County Jail to not only be a speaker, but also I'm a peer recovery specialist training to train people. And also I am being hired through Georgetown University Frederick Douglass Fellowship Project to be the community ambassador of Arlington. I'm on several different committees because I deal with those who have substance use and disorders and mental health challenges. And it's been a great honor that when I came out, I hit the ground running, and it put me in that circle. And not only in that circle, but it has allowed me to find not only who I am, but who my best self is still becoming. Thank you.
Well, thank you again for being here with us. It looks like we got you at the beginning before you get booked and busy. So thank you for having your time or taking time to be here with us. Excuse me.
Thank you for having me. Yes.
Yes, sir. So we like to start with everyone, like we do all of our guests, at the beginning of your story. Tell us a little bit about how you grew up, your family structure, if you experienced any trauma in your adolescent years.
I would tell you several weeks ago, I was with some people dealing with my childhood trauma. I grew up the last of 12 here in Arlington. I was born at Freeman's Bureau Hospital in D.C. I was raised here in Arlington, and I was born in 1961. And it was such a thing that I remember at a complete young age what I didn't want to remember. So I tried to block it out. So around 5 years old, my father had instilled so much fear in me because at that age, he never demonstrated anything but an ass whooping. That's all it was from him. And I got to say it like that. All I knew was going out the back door, getting switched, or him taking his belt off. And that was his way of demonstrating corporal punishment, but yet without any understanding. So between 5 and 12, I feel like I was terrorized by him, not only by him, but also too, my mother was really a verbal abuser. Growing up, I was not pretty much close with most of my siblings, but and that was a disconnect because in the house I grew up in, once you turn 18 and you graduate from high school, you had to get the hell out of there ASAP, and that was what that philosophy was from my parents, and so I became a bully because I didn't know how to express what was my feelings, my thoughts in any intelligent way. Nor was it encouraged. We grew up in a house where we never professed love for each other. So at the age that we all are now, for the most part, I do not talk to most of my siblings. My oldest sibling, Claudia, she's 82. She's my pride and joy, who has always held me down, even in my worst moments. So at 12 years old, I couldn't take it from my father no more. And it was the worst decision I could have made, because I tried to fight him back, and my father was a big man, and I tried to fight him back, and my mother couldn't stop him. And pretty much, I still remember hearing her say, "Claude, stop beating that boy. You're gonna kill him," you know. And my brother Tim coming in the door because he was on leave from the army, actually stopping my father from continually beat me, and that was it. You know, I tried to black out or block out memories of how horrible it was, until a few weeks ago when I started to do this inner child healing, and I feel like I call it inner child healed, um, and as I started to do this work, a lot of those things started to come back, because I had so much anger and bitterness. It was those things that from that trauma, after a beating, I would always say, "I wish he was dead. I wish he was dead," and those were the feelings because I had no relationship with my father. But and it was even at a young age playing little league football. It was my mother always taking me to get the football equipment, and it was always another mother, Mrs. Williams, in the neighborhood that was always taking us to the football games. So my relationship with him was done. And as I became
Daniel,
yeah.
I'm gonna intercept really quick because we gonna go back and forth and we gonna get a little more into it of things that have went along through your
Okay.
life. Okay.
Yes.
I want to start back. I want to jump back because I want to go back to when you were 5 years old and you said your dad was constantly giving you ass whoopings. We're gonna go there. Can you tell us, because there are a lot of kids that go through this and some people say it's normal, but it's just not normal. That is
No,
abuse.
it's not. No, it's
Can
not.
you tell us some of the forms of whoopings that your dad would give you and what was triggering him to do this, or maybe he just didn't dislike you?
My father came from off down in Macon County, Georgia. His grandfather was actually a slave, was born on his plantation, and by the color of his skin, he was the son of the slave master. And so his father, I can't even tell you who his father, what my grandfather's name would be. I don't know. He, had to pass on that, not only being a sharecropper, but also too is, that sick philosophy about if you spare the rod, don't spare the child, or don't spare the rod, so you don't spare the child. So his way of communicating was physical, and 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 at 5, I remember, getting sick one night, and my bedroom was across from my parents' bedroom, and I didn't want to wake him up. I crawled in that bedroom not to wake him up for fear of what he would do to me, and to wake my mother up to let her know that I was feeling sick. When we would get in the car and travel to Bridgeport, Connecticut, I'm a kid. I want to say something. And why would I do that? Because that's when a fist would always come and hit me in my face. Um, you know, Going out the back door and grabbing not one switch, but 2 or 3 switches, and have him bundle those together and always grab you, as they say, by the seat of the pants, which is always by the pants leg so you don't go nowhere. My father would beat me until he got tired, and always would say, "Don't cry." How could you not cry when you were in pain? But that was the way that psychologically he was messed up from the things that he went through that he did not choose to change. So he passed that on, um, and and um, and if it wasn't a switch, he always had this skinny leather belt that he wore because he was a brick mason, and he would pull them off them khaki pants that he had, and that's what he would do. And he would actually do that because of that was his thought and behavior. And I remember when I was a kid and my older brother was graduating from school and he got into it with my father. He was my one brother that I was really close to, David. And David had said some things to him or got smart with him and such. And I remember him chasing David out the house with the big old thick Coke bottle back in the early 70s. And those Coke bottles was no joke. They were really glass. And I remember David running out the house and went underneath the porch so my father couldn't get him. And after that, he went and joined the Navy. And his life was never the same after that neither. Those were the things that my father would do. And I don't remember my oldest brother because he was much, my oldest brother's turning 79. And him and we have not spoken in 53 years or 52 years. So we have no relationship. And my second oldest brother, it's the same with him. He's 74. He'll be 75 in May. We have no relationship. And my third oldest brother, his name is Tim. I don't remember him doing much to Tim. He lives in Fayetteville. He is somebody that periodically I talk to and go see when I go to North Carolina and visit him down in Fayetteville.
So I know you said your relationship with your mother was also kind of rocky. Regarding the treatment you got from your dad, was she like a willing participant, or was she on the receiving end of his anger as well? How was that dynamic?
That dynamic was always, my mother was always the instigator. She would always set things in motion. Claude, this boy did this and did that. But as soon as she always would say, Claude, this boy did this and this and he did that, it set everything in motion. She was I look at her upbringing as well. My grandmother, who was her mother, was a very mean person, and she grew up in a household with other siblings in that manner. My Uncle Richard and my Uncle Lawrence are both buried in Arlington Cemetery. They both fought in World War II. One was at the time a dope addict. His drug of choice was dope, and one was an alcoholic. One actually froze to death in a house that night because my mother, when she sent my oldest brother around the corner to put clothes on because my uncle Richard was intoxicated, and my grandmother, which they refer to Granny, would not let him in the house to put clothes on him. So he pretty much hypothermia that night, killed him. And my Uncle Lawrence, he just his drug of choice was dope, and he overdosed. And my uncle Warren, who also comes from that same family, he had 2 kids, and he had a wife, as they say, she committed suicide, and he had 2 kids that he never raised. My uncle Lloyd was also a sibling of theirs. He was a physical abuser. He was very physical, that even to the point that on his wedding day to my Aunt Marie, he beat her up. And this is the things that my mother also grew up in, because she had to deal with her mother, because she was the oldest, and it was completely, as they say, violent. Not only violent communication, but also to violent physical actions. And I never knew my grandmother lived around the corner, and she did not want to meet me. I did not know none of my grandmothers growing up. My grandfather neither. And so she was just, that was the way that she was. And my sisters, my aunt Vernice was the oldest living sibling of all of them. She was 91. No relationship at her. The only right before she passed, all she used to say, "That's Margaret's boy." She looked at me with none. So when growing up, we never showed affection in our house. And the first time I was able to even give my mother a hug, I was 28 years old. I was 28. So
Wow.
I took a picture of me when I was younger, in between 5 to 7, and a picture of me when I was my adolescence, when I was getting high. And I put my mother in between. I put my mother in between these pictures because I said, I'm going to heal from that person, which was my younger self, to my adolescent self, because all of that, I have to let it go. And not only I want to let it go because nothing can change what happened, but what I can change is what I have been doing and is doing as far as being healed from that. Because it put me in a space even to right now where I have to constantly tell myself that I love me, because it was never told. It was never said, and for the most part, it's not even said from any of my older siblings, even now, that they even come out and even say I love you. Matter of fact, I don't even have relationships with them, and I've even got to the point that, as I even said it to my older sister recently, because she had a stroke, and I said it, they already know that if anything happens to you, that I will know, but anything happens to them, not even call me and tell me, because
Wow.
I had one sister who rode with me for 30 years in prison. Now, Naomi, we call her Baby. She rode with me all of my life. She rode with me, but she drowned her pain in the bottle.
Wow.
February 27th of 23, we went in the house. No, February 20th, yeah, 23. We went in, Arlington County went in the house and found her in the house, sitting in the chair at the table. She had died. She had died. Um, yeah.
Wow. Um, I'm going to jump back just a little bit. So the abuse, as you said, you can remember 5 years old to 12 years old, you stood up to your dad. Through this process, how did this affect you outside of of the home, going through abuse? And did anyone notice the bruises on you?
No. And you know what? The bruises was an emotional bruise, because why would I be going to school and get suspended in kindergarten, or get suspended in the first grade, get suspended in the second grade, get suspended in the third grade? Every grade I was getting suspended, and I was acting out. I was really acting out, and that's why because I it, the outward appearance is like, this kid got a problem, but here it is. I was going to these pretty much predominantly all Caucasian schools, and them Caucasian teachers was definitely not. Um, I would say didn't care, because even till this day I can't remember not a teacher who really made besides the gym teacher, he was a black man who really made a difference, or black Dr. Albert Guy, who was a black principal. Those were the people who even made a difference in my life at the time that I can remember. Or Mr. Robinson, who was the music teacher, but for the most part, there was none of those white teachers that made it. So, and not only that, I wasn't a fast learner. I was definitely not a fast learner. So why, you know, further down the road at the 10th grade, I dropped out of school. You know, but what it showed was I had issues, and I had not only social issues, I had emotional intelligent issues, and I was really awkward. I felt um, ugly. I thought I was always stupid. I just you know, I was teased when I was coming up, and it was, well, oh, you look like a monkey, and it used to set me off. So I became very defensive, and I became very defensive at a young age, and because all I could see was red. There was never no in between with me. Even to the point that when I was incarcerated, one of the brothers in prison told me, he said, "Man, you got to stop being so defensive," because that was my comfort zone. That was the part that I had um, relegated my emotions to, was to act out.
Now, were there any outlets that you had at the time? Any close friends that you confided in, or had any hobbies, anything any escapes at all?
My escapism came when one of my neighbors across the street introduced me after my situation with my father to a hit of vodka and a Marlboro cigarette. That was my escape. That was the issue. I would say it was around 73, 74. That's when it set everything in motion. And when I mean by set everything in motion, it set off a catalog of different alcohol consumptions, drinks, and an array of different drugs. There wasn't nothing that I would not try that make me feel other than myself, because I hated who I was. I had been torn at a young age to have so much self-hatred, and that was because of all these things that was inflicted upon me on a consistent basis. It wasn't just everything. So not having a conversation with my father was another big thing. He never talked to me. Not once did he ever talk. So as I got older, and I dropped out of school, I was still able to go to I took adult education, just so I could go to the Arlington County Career Center. And for 2 years, I learned brick mason, because it was my way of trying to get with my father in order to build a relationship with him. When I went to him and asked him, would he give me a job, and he said no. That crushed me. That was the last time I ever had a conversation with my father. I want to say it was 8 years. It was 8 years that there was nothing said. And when he died, he fell off a scalpel 8 stories in Fairfax. And I came in the house, and that's all I heard. And I walked around the table, you know, hurting so bad, but yet I allowed that anger to take over. I had not, after that, I had recently got out of doing a 90-day treatment program, because I was smoking crack at the time. And when I heard that, that anger sent me right back to smoking crack. And because I didn't know what to do. And even I knew I didn't do what the program tell me, but I did what was my level of accountability, which was to go back to using again. And even at all the way up to that time, my mother and I, we didn't know how to communicate with each other, and it was always confrontational, always very argumentative, and I'm looking at at it as also to a generational gap, but also too is her really not knowing how to express love in any form or any form of a healthy way was also an issue. And that was, was why it took me to 28 years. I was 28 years old when I gave my mother her first hug, because that was something that would even that just didn't happen.
Um, whew. I want to go back because you said at 12 you started, and we want to bring awareness to this because these are conversations that I have because we're both in the field of saving youth. So bringing transparency is very, very important. At 12, you said you started to drink, smoke cigarettes. So through that course, how did that lead you into the drug addictions? And if you could tell us a little bit about your drugs of choices, like how did you get addicted and some of the things that happened during the process of
It, it,
your.
it back in then they had Mexican marijuana. It was Mexican, so that was the weed of the day. Then it went to a different array: Colombian Red, Colombian Gold, Acapulco Gold, a Million, Tie Stick. It was an array of all these different types of weed, and funny that it is every type of weed is named anything but American weed. It's all somebody else's country weeds. I definitely wanted that to be noted. And so I found these things called black beauties, rainbows. These were different forms of speed. Now, then that became a high that I really enjoyed because it really took me and changed the complexity of my thinking. And it made me feel like, okay, I was really okay. Um, and then came, by the late 70s, came cocaine. I won't forget because it was a song that came out by Eric Clapton, you, Cocaine. And it was like highlighted cocaine. So cocaine, and then also too, introduction to crystal meth. So that was another form of speed, but also too, I love to experiment with different acids at that time too, because you had Orange Sunshine, Purple Haze, Microdot, um, different type of LSDs, depending on what was on the symbol of the white little paper. Um, these were things that I feel like at the time I had to do in order to feel a sense of normalcy, in order for me to feel my level of normalcy, um, because it kept me out of not wanting to feel uh, how much self hatred that I had for myself. So I would definitely experiment, and then I had tried freebasing. It was like 1980, and it was different because freebasing and crack was two different things. I could put that down compared to crack. So I kept experimenting. I mean, I didn't shoot up, but I definitely snorted it. And then sometimes I, was cook it up, run it back in the needle, then shoot it back in the spoon, and then liquid, take the liquid and and run it down my nose. It would definitely give the same effect as if I was shooting up. Um, and then wow, stayed that way. Everything. This was really a daily basis. And then crack came out in '86. Um, I was living in Philadelphia at the time, and crack came out. I was instantly. I was instant. I was instant crackhead from the first hit that I took, and and who also sold everything they had that I could sell or steal. I even stole from my mother. I stole from my mother. I had got that far down that I had stole from my mother. As a matter of fact, it was a few days before Christmas that I stole her money and to go get high. And then I cowardly went and hid at my other sister's house in Alexandria because I had to call my sister Naomi and ask her to send me money to get home from Philadelphia because I had smoked up all my money and I was at that time became homeless and it was Christmas Day. I won't forget it. It was Christmas Day, '86. I'm crying like a baby, because I had lost everything. Um, I came home here and I regrouped real fast. I regrouped real fast. And the craziest thing was, why would I go get an Audi? I would go get an Audi 5,000. Couldn't really afford it, and it wasn't long before I went back to smoking crack. Um, and that was in my 20s. That was in my 20s. So I when it came to even snort, the only thing I would snort then was that the dope would had a different name to it. That was the only thing I would snort then to try to keep my nerves intact. And I went through treatment in '88, got out. I used again to my father's death. Then I tried to get myself back together. Got a catering chef job at the Smithsonian American History Building, American History, and I only cooked for the executives. And it didn't take long. I found a house food store on 17th Street up for DuPont, and they had these pills called Excel, and these Excel pills were like speed with a big, large cup of coffee. It set me off, and that became a drug. I would call myself going to AA and NA meetings, but I wasn't talking and saying anything, and that became an escape route. So
now, throughout all of this, as you're experimenting, early, adulthood, what was, your personal life like? Did you have any relationships, any significant friendships or anything, that stood out during that time?
my first really relationship that I had was with, her name was Shelly. We were both working together at the Marriott Twin Bridges, and she quit, and I followed suit wherever she went, and I supplied all the drugs, and I got away from everybody, and I disappeared. I had guys in the neighborhood that I grew up with that we were pretty much tight, and some of the girls in the neighborhood where I grew up at, and yeah, it was that kind of group where we did a lot of different things together, from the neighborhood. But most important is we did drugs together, and we all experiment with different drugs together. But yet when it came to me, I was out of control. So I met Shelly, and Shelly was going to Howard, and I pushed her, not pushed her, but encouraged her so much. She graduated, and she was my first relationship. I was 20 years old, and she was my first relationship, because I didn't know how to have relationships with other girls at the time. Everything else was I would objectify them to this type of role, and it was always based on sex, but it was never. I knew how to be intimate, nor did I know how to pay attention Did I know how to walk down the street holding hands? I didn't know how to do those things. I, um, I had to be taught, because I had to be told, you need to walk down the street, hold my hand, and such, because I was that far, I was that much dysfunctional when it came to interpersonal relationships and interpersonal communication. I didn't know how to do it because I was it was because of what I believed about myself. And the only time that I really did not believe that about myself is when I got high, until I started smoking crack. That changed the dynamic too, because I didn't want to do it, but I kept doing what I didn't want to do because it was the only thing that I knew how to do. So I would actually work a job, get paid, wait for payday, and smoke that money, my payday, my paycheck up in a night, and then look stupid. And then I go home to my mother and ask her to take care of me. And I'm in and I did that. And my mother would give me cranberry juice. I won't forget it. She would give me cranberry juice to, to let me know that I was trying to get my my energy back up. And then I had to just look stupid. And then I consistently, this is what I did, because I couldn't get it right. So after my first treatment center was in '86. It was in Philadelphia. I was a cook in the rehab, and they had to send me to their affiliated rehab, a 28-day program. My first day out of there, I'm selling my leather jacket to get a hit.
And while we're right there, I got a real quick question, because I always wondered, because I did ask someone why. So I'm going to ask you, because at one point in your life you had a crack addiction. What is it about crack that keeps you coming back? Why can't people stray away from crack, and the addiction is so bad that you would do anything for it?
Mm. I'm gonna give you this. In '93, I was in prison. Back then, they used to get all the good movies, so they ended up getting Jungle Fever. And I remember watching Gator, and at the time Holly Berry, I forgot her name that she played when they went in the Taj Mahal. I'm in the cell going crazy because the euphoria was so strong, and watching them go in there and seeing that even though it was a movie, it was so real to life that they was actually looking like crackheads, smelling like crackheads, and they was smoking crack, and they was acting like crackheads, and they was smoking crack. That I actually literally the euphoria had hit me so strong that a lot of times it would make you defecate. And actually, I happened to be in a single cell at the time when I went through all of that, and it was like I was hitting a pipe all over again. And that portion of it. That first blast is that part that we try to recreate over and over with any additional hits. Was always that first blast, because it was nothing never like that first blast. And even as I explain this or talk to you about it right now, it's like I've been coming up on 18 years of sobriety right now. I still know how that feels right now, even talking about it. And the thing about um, after that movie went off, it was a public service announcement that came on, and it was a person that I used to run the streets with. Her drug of choice was shooting dope, and mine was smoking crack. So when we used to run up and down 14th Street, um, um, she she caught AIDS. She caught AIDS, and she gave a public service announcement because when she had enough, she said, "Come on, man, let's go get clean." She went and got clean, and stayed. She stuck and stayed, and I didn't. Um, and when I seen her, I was really happy to see her. And it was one person that worked the detox. He worked um, the methadone clinic. This is all in Alexandria, and then he also worked for the Phoenix House. He was a person at that time kept in touch with me, and after that public service announcement, it wasn't long after she had died from AIDS, and I will never forget her because she was somebody that really tried, and one of her legacies is in the rooms of NA. They still talk about her, right, as a meeting tonight somewhere, because of the impact that she made when she got clean, and but it's always that first blast when it comes to crack. So afterwards you try to still recreate it, so that makes you not only nervous, especially if you ain't got no dope to calm your nerves, and not only that, you get to looking around, everything white looks like crack, and that's how the insidious and the insaneness is of this disease. you know it's very, and people are still away. I have to share this quick moment. Somebody that I tried to help, come really almost a year ago, actually called me the other day, last weekend, and I called her back on Monday, and she let me know that she had 2 weeks clean, which was good because she said that one of the things that I showed her was that I cared, and that's why she wanted me to know.
Absolutely. I do want to ask, do you believe that your mom, kind of carried you through, or, was there for you in those hard moments, kind of based on her guilt about your upbringing?
Yes, I do. My mother at the time before my father's death, my mother had a triple bypass heart operation at the Washington Hospital Center. While she was on the table, she had a stroke. They couldn't stop it. When they finally put it back together, um, she had to relearn how to talk, everything, but she could never walk again. And her left side was basically paralyzed. When I got locked up, she had another heart attack when she found out what I did. And but one of the things is, for 6 years, she made them bring her. She made them my siblings. She made them bring her down to this prison. As a matter of fact, I was at Augusta Correctional Center, and she would make them bring her to see me in that prison, several times a year, and that was what my mother would have them do, because you know I was still her last. I was still her, as it was. I was still her baby, and she and I came to terms with her a lot easier than I did with my father. And one of the things is she tried to love me as best as she knew how, and but because she came from the same thing that was advocated in the house that she also married my father with, and they really never worked to change the narrative or break the cycle, and so they continue the cycle. and as it is with my older siblings, they all continue the cycle that they inherited instead of being the ones that break that cycle.
I want to go into, because you said, because we're getting there at time, what led up to your 30-year incarceration?
We led up to it after treatment. It was somebody that showed there the night before I was getting on the treatment, and I had the wrong thing on my mind. Oh, let me go talk to her and objectify her sexually and see what happens. So that, a few days after I had got out of treatment, I hooked up with her, and then that started it. And then over a month later, we got together, and then I basically moved in with her. And that was really the first time I got violent with her. Um, that was the first time, because she was like, "You need to move," and I got violent with her. Um, I got arrested by Alexandria Police Department. They came to my mother's house looking for me because I got violent with her, and she didn't testify in court. After I got out, we got back together. I won't forget it. We went to McDonald's on Columbia Pike in Arlington and sat down and we talked. We got back together. Um, I was extremely needy. I was extremely fearful of being, as it was, abandoned. I was extremely fearful. So I had asked her to marry me, and she was like, yes. Um, but also, too, she was also leery that I would get violent with her again. And I, promised, reassure I would never do that again. Um, and so I had lost my job at the Smithsonian. And that same day I lost my job, I went right back up 14th Street and started and smoked all night long. Um, that time, and when it came back, our relationship was definitely not the same. And I ended up getting another job, but our relationship wasn't the same. So she had asked me to move out. And I thought, well, if I move out, I accommodate her wishes, then, we can work to get things back together again. And I became even more needier because that wasn't the case. Um, then I became a stalker, and I started stalking her. Um, and when I started stalking her, that's when I became obsessed. And I didn't want her to be with anyone else. Um, so one morning, I went to her. I went to the apartment and I knocked on the door and I asked her, could we talk? And she was like, "I'm going to work. I need to go." I'm like, "Just okay, we talk." And she could see how crazy I was in my eyes. And then so she started to spray me with Mason. And that's when I just, all the craziness came out. Um, and that was how I didn't know how bad it was until um, court, really, because even the detectives didn't tell me how bad it was. And at the time, I won't forget it. It was a movie, Julia Roberts. I don't know who the man was in the movie, but it was called Sleeping with the Enemy, and I was the enemy. Um, I was sentenced in Fairfax Courthouse by a jury, definitely none of my peers, and they gave me a life sentence. My first 7 years in prison, I stayed in the hole. I stayed getting into stuff. I stayed because I didn't, because the hole was dark. I didn't, it was really dark, and I stayed there as much as I could. And when I came out, ended up getting into another fight, going right back in. And what changed my course, I ended up reading a book about the autobiography of Malcolm X. That was the start of a change in course, and after that, I could, started to stay out of the hole, but I was still getting in trouble. But it was after 11 years of being incarcerated. I wanted to know what I did. I wanted to know why I did it, and that changed a lot of my life. I reached out and wrote as best as I could to some state senators and delegates in the General Assembly, and one of them responded. He sent me 2 addresses, and I wrote to one of them, which is it was the Turning Points Men's Program in Dumfries, Virginia. They're still there today, and the person there who was the director wrote me back and said they would take me on as a client because I wanted to know, and that's when they sent me my DV 2000 workbook. But keep in mind, at that time, I had so much shame and so much guilt. It was so overwhelming. It really was. It was, and I hated myself so bad. And a friend's father, he had reached out to me when I was in Fairfax jail because he was intending on walking those years with me. He was a retired colonel. His name was William A.B. Martin. And he kept telling me, God loves you. You need to love yourself. He kept telling me God forgave me. And that's what it was. And he wrote me multiple sermons and hymns. And he made sure that him, his son, and his grandson would come and visit me at wherever I was. And he made an impact. And so I always refer to him as my surrogate father. And I started to find out through the DV 2000 workbook, the wheel of the cycle of control, and the luminous intimidation and the verbal intimidation, and I started to learn things that I didn't know, but I started to learn things in relations to how I grew up. Was all that was set in motion then. And then with the edit of the drugs, it didn't stop. So, but it still didn't make it no better for me liking myself. And I would always say, no, she did not deserve that. She did not deserve that at all. And I would definitely always be sorry for what I've done. And sorry is definitely not a word to really articulate what I feel and think about what I've done. But what I've tried to do is speak out. I try to advocate. I try to connect with other people dealing with domestic violence, because what it does. We did not have any children, but the fact is, I took a person's life, and somehow, um, I would always be. I can't never deny. I can never downplay it. Definitely have to face it. I've been in prison with some guys that really did not like it when a guy took a woman's life, um, and 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 but however, I can't change what I've done. No matter if I could, Lord knows I would, but I can't. And so I've written an article. I've done a movie, a documentary on it. I've taken courses. I even have taken a facilitating domestic violence facilitating course. Um, um, that's what I where I've been. That's where I've been because it I had to do with little bit, but it was so hard because I just feel like I didn't want to be abandoned again, and I've really come to realize that that's what I felt about my parents and siblings as though they had abandoned me. So when I came out of prison, my sister she had rode long enough with me, and her actions, which I didn't see until later on down a couple of years down the road now, that she let me go, and so and I couldn't see how they would come and visit me in prison, but when I came out, it was like you on your own, you know. And when I say God is the best of planners, I didn't know the things that God would have in order in my life, that He was the best of planners, that it put me in a position where I got a job within 3 months, and it put me in a position where I could actually start helping other people, and still do as a certified peer recovery specialist, but also too as a domestic violence advocate, facilitator, and once again another podcast because I've done Rock You Shine. I've done a couple other podcasts on, but this is the first time I've been with two sisters doing a podcast, and this is the different. I've been mostly with Caucasian people, and besides Dea Khan, who was the film director of Behind the Rage, Domestic Violence in America, and I pray that I recommend that everyone watch that documentary that came out 2021, 2022, something like that, after they did all the editing. But they filmed me for 9 months and they cut a lot out of me out, but it's not all about me. It was all about everyone that's in it. So yeah.
All right, and I just have one more question before Demetria gets into her ending credits here. Do you feel like you would have kicked your habits if not for prison?
I was using when I was in prison. My last drug of choice was snorting morphine pills and smoking weed. One of the brothers in prison who was from Churchill, Richmond, he said, promise me one thing, you gonna get your life together. I got his picture here, a prison picture of him, but I got a picture of him because he made a difference just by asking me to do that one thing. And since then, I've kept my promise to him because he was dying in prison and they wasn't going to let him go because he had caught 20 years of federal time in a state prison for running dope. And so when he, and that was my affinity with him, affinity for him. So when he asked me to do that, that's what it was. So I stopped snorting morphine pills and stopped smoking weed at State Farm Correctional Center. and a couple years later, he died at Greenville um, Correctional Center, and he died in a bad state. Um, that was my relationship with this guy, because he made that much of a difference just by asking me one question. Um, so now, um, it took me some years afterwards to even find out who I was. I had no clue of who I was. I had, and I struggled. It was over 5 years that I struggled to gain a footage of who I was, and and that's what. And so when I came out, um, April 21st of 2020, out of the Department of Corrections, I came out with a happy heart, but I came out with, I knew why I was there. I came out with still with that pain. I came out with that shame, and I came out with that guilt. But I just knew in order for me to feel better about myself, I had to extend not so much as a handout, but as a hand up. That was the most important part. And I have a picture of two brothers, one reaching down to give another brother a hand up, and that's what I believe. And even till this day, I still associate with and still receive calls and still do what I can for the brothers that I still have relationships with who are still on the inside. April 7th, one of them called me and said he getting out of prison. He asked me could I come pick him up. So I said yes. April 7th is a Saturday. I mean on Monday. So I said yes. But most important is right now, after I get off this call here, I have to call a brother in California for a domestic violence place called Ruby's Place, because I've had my first group at the first Wednesday of this month. So I need to call him and organize for my second group, um, um, to facilitate for the second group for April, which is the first Wednesday of the month. Yep. And,
We can off note. I would like to know where I can chat with you at because I'm a survivor, almost losing my life. As you know, my ex-husband brutally beat and stabbed me 6 times. So this is not a coincidence. I just had my 12-year anniversary of survival on March 17th. So I think this is God's interconnection on having you as a guest on Unfiltered, Unspoken podcast because we get to see a totally different side. I want to close out really quick. We usually ask a question. This is the one that I want to ask today is because we deal with youth and domestic violence, and the goal is to capture youth before they make the wrong decisions and choices in life. Because as we know, childhood traumas affect adult decisions. What would you tell a youth going through hurt and why drugs would be a bad choice if that's what they are going to rely on from having household issues because a lot of youth turn to drugs or alcoholism because of the hurt and pain that they're going through. What from your life experience, what would you tell them why not to go to the choice of using drugs, and what would you tell them to do to stray away from the drugs to do something positive?
First of I would actually talk to her about or him about the cycle of addiction. You know, which is why what type of stresses you have and how um and to how emotionally how do you handle these emotions, and then I would also stress it by who are you hanging out with, and what are they actually saying to you that is helping you develop your best self throughout just your struggles that you're going through at home, but who would be beneficial that you could depend on that will say some of the better things that you need to hear and not the destructive things that will make your situation even worse. And then I would also explain to them that, there's only three different alternatives that actually happens when you get caught up in the grips of either drinking or drugging, because it creates more and more cravings once you start, because then you start feeling anything other than. And then I would like to be able to show them the videos called Nuggets. It's about a little bird that takes a taste of something that makes him that so happy the first time he takes it that he wants to feel that same way again, and then he takes it again, and then he takes it again and again, and then it starts weighing on him, and it's not making him happy no more, and then he needs more and more to try to get him that way, and then somewhere along the line he hits the bottom, and once he hits the bottom, it's hard to come back up. And that's when the remorse and the shame and the guilt comes in. So I would actually pour them, that would actually sit down with either that youth, whether that male or female, and start looking for resources that will be beneficial for them to get involved with, because I need to know what are the things that interest them, and not only that, what are their hobbies that will keep them developing a better sense of self, not only self, but a better sense of self-worth, and a better sense of self-esteem, and a better representation of self, instead of thinking that the first thing that you need to run to is drinking and drugging, and whether a boy or a girl, where you could end up getting pregnant, and then there you go, you create more issues because of your age. So it's a pretty much a mentorship relationship that I would definitely have to say. But most important is understanding what the cycle of addiction is, and how they become affected through the cycle of addiction in order to become anything but their best selves.
Wonderful words, wonderful words. Thank you again for being here with us. As we do with everyone, we like to give you a chance to somewhat sell yourself, or let the viewers know how they can contact you, utilize your services, what you have going on coming up, if you have anything for sale, any charities you want to advocate for, anything. You have the floor.
Well, it is an organization in Maryland that goes around through the schools in Maryland. It's called Arise and Flourish. Definitely, and they are really getting out there. They got over 4,500 schools in the state of Maryland that they go to. They came out here to Virginia, to Arlington, and now the next phase is to hit the schools here in Fairfax. I actually do work for an organization called the Chris Atwood Foundation, which is the only harm reduction organization in all of Northern Virginia, that provides everything of all the services that we provide for free. But most important, I am a peer recovery specialist trainer, and I can train people to become peer recovery specialists. And most important is being able to take your lived experience and meet not only yourself where you're at, but meet other people where they're at, in order to help them to develop their best self. So definitely, to contact me is really my phone number. It says also to Facebook. I do have a Facebook account that's running, but also to do Demetria. Definitely, if you can reach out to her, she has my phone number, because this is serious, and it gets even serious because of the fact that people are in emotion of losing jobs, and sometimes it's like COVID, but in a different stage, because you can lose everything you have if you lose your job now, because of what is going on. From the politics, but don't let it make you bitter. allow this situation with these politics to make you a better person, and not only to make you an advocate, to make you a person that's willing to get out and demonstrate, and to have your voice not only heard. Um, when I got out, 13 months after I got out of the Department of Corrections, I got my rights back to vote. Um, I utilized that because prior to my incarceration, I voted one time in 1984 for Jesse Jackson to become president. Um, that was before till then that I did it. Now I exercise. Not only that, I do have a way of getting in contact with our governors and other people in political office here in the state of Virginia, is because I want them to know that there's people like me that's out here that believe in not only in a second chance, but making sure that we take a second chance to get that first chance right. It's so important because, we all have thinking errors. We all, take responsibility for what we've done, and nothing can ever change what we've done except we can change who we are from who we were. And it's so important. But otherwise, I definitely got on the display of the picture that you had, is because I graduated from this program right here, right? I graduated from this program, and it has the symbol of Virginia Commonwealth University. When I got out of prison, I've learned to know that I'm not as stupid as I thought I was. And I've learned to know that definitely, not in no conceited way. I used to think I was ugly, but no, I'm not. I take my beauty and let it shine from the inside out. So I've done a lot of things since I've been out. Next month, April 21st, will be my 5th year that I've been out of the Department of Corrections, even though I'm still in hand of the Virginia Parole Board, but I'm out of prison. And I'm out of prison not to do what I do for me, but also to do what I do for to help others. So anytime that I can be of help and of service to you two beautiful sisters, call on me. Please call on me. And most important, if I can be of any help to anyone on this podcast, Demetria has my phone number. Give me a call anytime before 9. Because you gotta have some me time. You gotta get out the matrix. In this, because the matrix started around 2:30 this morning for me. So.
Yep, because I still be turning my phone on D&D. Don't I had to get used to that because so many people call. But personally, me and Sid can speak for herself as well. We want to thank you for being a guest on Unfiltered Unspoken podcast. It's a blessing to see the flip side of contributing to domestic violence and how that has shaped your life and the childhood traumas and the drug addictions, and to bring awareness of how being addicted on drugs can cause some very bad decisions and hitting rock bottoms and being dependent on others, just showing that transparency abroad. We want to thank you. I know it's hard, facing challenges, but I wish my abuser would have been sincere about apologizing instead of bashing me. So it's an honor to hear how your situation affected you, and the guilt and the hurt and the pain, and that you're taking that and you're helping others, opposed to avoiding it. So I want to thank you for that, as well. And after this, how we can work together to do some things, because this aligns and we can help so many to bring awareness to it. Sid, is there anything else you want to say before we shut down?
Nope. You said it all. good.
Okay.
We covered it.
That's my girl right there. That's my little sis. So
Thank you too. Thank you for even asking me to do such. You know,
my pleasure.
and mine as well. Definitely.
Yeah, we want you to hold on until we finish closing out. And thank you for tuning into Unfiltered Unspoken podcast. We're going to continue to share life experiences. Ain't that right, City said?
That's right.
Yep, you're going to get it from us. So hopefully Daniel's testimony, especially to those that are abusing and how things can end up, hopefully this will be something that will shine light on you just to stop abusing, and that it's called a crime of passion.
Yes.
I've been through that crime of passion, and typically the person being abused holds all the risk of the from the abuser, of people protecting and taking up for them and not holding them accountable. So if you're watching this and you're abusing, please take hindsight to this and know that Daniel's testimony is real, and this is something that he's doing. He's an advocate, and hopefully it'll change your heart to get your life together, to start that journey to healing and to face the traumas that you have been through. We want to thank you. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
One last thing. When I used to say, well, my family would say, if you wasn't on drugs, you wouldn't have done what you done. You know, what I realized, if I didn't learn how to make bad decisions, I wouldn't have done what I've done. It wasn't the drug. It was my bad decision making, which makes me take responsibility for what I've done.
Amen. Look at that. Look at it. And a lot of people will not do that, and it's called accountability. And a lot of people don't want to take accountability. So God bless you for taking accountability. Well, we're at time. We have went over, but thank you for tuning in to Unfiltered Unspoken podcast. And we will see you soon with more testimonies. Peace.
Yeah. Bye. Bye-bye. Yeah, everyone have a beautiful evening.